Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the podcast Strikes Back. My name is George and you're listening to our review of Shazam. The boys Connor.
Shazam!
Benny.
Shazam.
So here we are, guys, for the 87th movie in the DCEU, directed by David F. Sandberg, who did the really cool horror film Lights Out in 2016, as well as a favorite of ours here, Annabelle Creation. We've been covering all the trailers. We've been talking about it. Let's get into the non-spoiler part of the review. How is everyone feeling in the preamble to Shazam? Let's go. Who's taking the mantle?
I'm going to jump in as the resident Captain Marvel Shazam fan. This guy, I've been a huge fan of his for got to be going on a decade now. Ever since I really started getting into comics when I was a young adult, I guess. And first read the magnum opus Kingdom Come, in which Captain Marvel, as he was then known, featured very prominently.
That's a Justice League, right?
Yeah. I'm going to apologize in advance here. I'm going to be alternating between Captain Marvel and Shazam a lot. I just can't help it. It's
because
how I was raised.
Those that do not know or haven't, watched us before, listened to us before,
Ben's explained to us many times.
Yeah. The original name for the Shazam character in the movie is actually Captain Marvel. Shazam is the name of the wizard that he gets his powers from. Captain Marvel is the hero.
Yeah, and that was until quite recently, really. He kept that name for about 80 years in the comics, so it's a shame they had to change it. But yeah, so hearing this movie be announced would have seemed more ridiculous to me if they hadn't already announced and started working on an Aquaman film, I guess. The state that the DCEU was in was pretty damn bad, so it was not really a time to be optimistic, but it was still really interesting to me that they were doing it, especially going head-to-head with Marvel's Captain Marvel.
Within a month of each other.
Yeah, I mean, they're both currently in cinemas, which is so weird.
It's like a volcano Dante's Peak, It's
yeah,
like one of those
asteroid.
White House down, or whatever the fuck that was. Yeah.
So I guess I just kind of kept my thoughts to myself really until the trailers started coming along. First up, I guess David F. Sandberg was encouraging, as a director who I really liked, though from a very different style of film, from a couple of horror movies that I enjoyed a lot. But then the trailer came along, and I'd been a bit iffy on Zachary Levi because, I don't know, I've just got such a specific image in my head of this character. I'm not usually too precious about these ones, but like I said, I'm a huge fan.
What was the sort of image you had?
So the Alex Ross paintings. Same as with pretty much all of the Justice League.
Alex Ross.
Alex Ross, he paints lifelike versions. He's the illustrator for Kingdom Come. If you type in his version of Shazam right now, you'll see it's just gorgeous artwork, and it's just he's kind of had a specific.
I know this guy.
Yeah,
I know.
Anyone would recognize his work. Yeah,
gotcha.
And the thing about Captain Marvel is, unlike a lot of
very
other
realistic
superheroes,
kind of style.
Yeah, unlike a lot of superheroes are really defined by their costume and stuff. Captain Marvel actually does have a real consistent face to him. He's got really squinty eyes.
Okay.
He looks like Patrick Warburton from Seinfeld.
He's got that Hanna-Barbera look.
yeah, just kind of the line surprise. So that's a weird thing to kind of pick onto, but it just most superheroes like Batman could have the face of anyone really under that mask. Yeah. But yeah, so I wasn't too convinced on that. But then watching the trailers, they looked certainly funny. Not the exact direction, not the exact tone of the original comics, but I was certainly willing to give it a chance. How about you guys? Less baggage than me, I'm sure.
Way
Far
less baggage.
I had never heard of this character before. Basically, before you told me about him when this was first announced, and I think it was probably first announced. I think actually maybe even before Black Adam, because I remember talking about Black Adam. After Black Adam. I think I remember talking about Black Adam on some of the first episodes we did back when we were recording at your parents' place.
Yeah.
So that was the first time I'd ever heard about Shazam. I had no understanding of his powers or really any kind of vested interest in it. So the first indication I got of what this movie may be like, apart from the fact that it's going to be a DC movie and therefore probably shit, was when the trailer came out. And I immediately loved the idea that they were going to go from a character that had a little bit more levity than had previously been seen in the DCEU.
A little bit.
Yeah, a significant amount more. I mean, I was getting very tired of the tone of the DC universe. And so this kind of felt like something that just could really bring about a bit of, novelty and change in that. So I was actually very excited from the get-go, very excited about this. I never really held this out to be a masterpiece or anything like that, but certainly was I was probably more excited for this than any other DC film that I had previously come up against, seen.
No, it kind of is a battle with them sometimes.
Yeah, I'm with you, Connor. I didn't have any preconceived ideas about this character, and there was a one shot in the trailer where he goes up the skate ramp. Is that what you call it? A skate?
Yeah,
skate
half
pipe.
pipe,
That's it. And he
So
fell
rad.
down, and I don't know, that really stuck with me, and the mid-budget aspect to it, the fact that this kid could transform, and we had this dichotomy with this character. I was very, very intrigued where they were going to go here, and it almost reminded me a little bit of Kick-Ass for some reason. Don't know why. Maybe it's the red costume and the more
It's a
like
kid being a
urban
superhero.
environment. But I was really, really on board with it. So, but I'm with you, Connor. I wasn't my expectations weren't out of whack. Like I was still kind of like, it's probably going to be solid.
So how did you go in thinking about Mark Strong? Let's be honest.
Should we get into the Mark Strong stuff? Should we just get fucking
we
into
should
it?
unload our biases before we start talking about this
Yeah.
movie. Yeah.
George, tell us how you feel about Mark Strong.
Mark Strong, man. He's the weakness of this movie. Seriously. He's the fucking weakness. No, let's start off the review somewhere else. Let's go for more overall impressions, or like what was some good stuff that stood out to everyone.
So Zachary Levi, I think, did a really good job. I think is probably my first impression. I think that him and the supporting cast of kids, I thought, did a really excellent job in this film. I think they're the real kind of champions.
Yeah, they're the MVPs for sure.
Yeah, they're the heart of this film, and it is retrospectively no surprise coming from David F. Sandberg after Annabelle Creation,
Yeah.
which had a large cast of children in it, and they were all really terrific.
The same sort of the orphans in a foster home. Like there's a lot of parallels with Annabelle Creation.
Always such a risk with child actors. I mean, it can just. I mean, George, I don't know when the last time you watched the earlier Harry Potter films, but
Yeah.
I mean, those
You got to work on nostalgia there.
yeah,
Oh,
pretty
yeah.
much. Because I mean, I really like them all now. I think Daniel Radcliffe is amazing. I really like Rupert Grint, and I really like Emma Watson and that. But
Killed him.
that is
Killed them all.
some pretty shoddy fucking acting in those first couple of films.
But these kids fucking nailed it, man.
Yeah, I was really impressed. I think that ironically, I thought the more that you got into the supporting cast, the better they were. Like the two kind of main kids that you see in the trailer and all that are good, not great. But I was absolutely blown away by that supporting cast.
They were great for me. Those main two, man.
Yeah.
Asher Angel as young Billy Batson was really solid. Jack Dylan Grazer though from It Chapter 1.
Oh, that's right. He was the kid with the
Placebos.
crazy mum,
yeah, I loved him in that,
terminally ill.
and I absolutely loved him in this too. That kid,
How much of it was your kind of the baggage you're bringing from it?
none at all.
Yeah.
No, not so. I like him. Like he's just wins me over every
He was
single
so
time.
funny.
Yeah,
He
I
played
think
off
he's got
Zachary
a real
Levi
future on him.
amazingly well, and I think the heart and the solace of this movie is definitely with that cast, like the warmth and. Like when we got into more of the superhero-y stuff, I was like, kind of fuck off. Like I want to go back to these guys. Like I'm really enjoying the dynamics here.
Yeah, yeah. So just the main pairing of the kid from It, and both Zachary Levi and Billy Batson.
Yeah.
Just that kind of buddy thing in this whole movie was I loved every second of that.
I feel like if you're a dad, you're gonna love this movie. And I feel like if you're a kid, you're gonna love this movie. I feel like there's just
But mums will hate it.
mums will hate it. Don't mums. Are there any mums listening? Just avoid Shazam like the plague. No, but I don't know. I just felt like if you had a child, you could definitely relate to this movie in a number of.
Yeah.
Let's look at this movie in a number of different ways.
So would you say that? Did you have any kind of? I guess did you like the kind of more superhero aspect of this film?
What I liked is the way they played with it, and the moments when they deconstructed it and had fun. I really loved that. There's some really funny stuff in here.
It was almost
We'll
a
talk about it in
parody.
spoilers.
At points. Yeah.
I wanted them to actually do that more. I feel like that could have been a main ingredient to Shazam, because a main ingredient for me for Shazam is the family, the warmth, that element. The deconstruction of the superhero genre was sprinkled in there nicely, but I wanted it dialed to 11 because when they did it so well. I thought.
I like how they did it sparingly. I think that if you kind of shove it too much in people's face, it becomes overkill. Like they're kind of overusing the gimmick or the kind of main line.
Yeah,
of the
for
film.
sure.
So I think they kind of towed a very precious line there, and I think they kind of nailed it on the terms of let's chuck in some like little kind of wink wink nudge nudge type stuff to the genre of superhero films. I thought that it was a really unique take on that. I mean, the idea of someone, a unique take on an origin story. Particularly, I love that it's an origin story in a universe that already has heroes. It's not your Batmans where he's not like a superpower. He's just kind of this vigilante. It's not this kind of Superman where the world is dealing with an alien. Like everyone's like super. It's like this guy is just like, oh yeah, that's the new celebrity. I love that aspect of it. I love exploring that.
Yeah, it very firmly had one foot set in just a kind of a functioning superhero world.
Yeah.
Without being, having to bow down to these other movies that have come before.
Explain it all away.
Yeah, which is great because, most of those movies suck. So I thought it did a really good job of being, clearly part of a DC universe, the DC universe maybe, but not really kind of giving away anything that's come before.
Pretty clearly part of the DCEU, right?
I would completely disagree, and we can get into specifics later, very much so. But
I feel like you can look at this from a fair few different angles.
Yeah, like obviously, yes, there is a functioning shared universe going on right now, and this movie is coming out at the same time of that. So it is, without them saying otherwise, sure, it's part of that. But I think they could, in a second, if they wanted to specify, be like, no, this isn't connected to those at all. It's just part of a superhero world. And I think that's a choice, and I think it works really well, and it's just really nicely. It's never like overbearing in trying to present the other kind of connections in here.
Yes.
Yeah. No, I think they did a really good job, and they avoided the trap of leaning too heavily into that shared universe. I think they really they hit a very good spot in that. Like, I mean, the connections are tenuous to the.
It's your word of the week.
It is to the main universe. So you don't see Aquaman suddenly just rock up and be like, "Hey guys, I'm Ian," and then run away. So I think that was good that they.
Yeah, there's no Thor: The Dark World. Loki just turns into Captain America for a second. Yeah, which is in retrospect kind of a groaner of a cameo.
Going back to what you said, Connor, this is one of the best. Like the sequencing done with the origin story and him discovering his powers. God, I got a kick out of that. Just really nailed it, man. Like the fun aspects, like you can imagine being this 14-year-old kid and getting these powers. That's exactly how you would be.
Totally.
He's like now. He's doing the Rocky song. I don't know if that's a spoiler, but shooting the lightning. But like that is it, man. Like that's what it would be like, and I felt like it captured that childlike innocence really, really effectively.
But not even like absolutely, but not even necessarily childlike. Like it's just so telling, like how few of these movies actually have these people enjoying the abilities they've gotten.
Yeah,
they're burdened with great
it's very
power.
True.
Yeah, like if I were to get that shit now, I'd be doing exactly what he does in this movie. It's fucking great, and it's so great to see the joy of superheroics on screen. Like just these two kids having so much fun with it. It's so infectious.
I really think that sequence, that half-hour segment is really probably the strongest component of this movie.
So I mean, we've avoided it for as long as I think we should. Let's jump into Mark Strong.
Yeah,
so the villain aspect, I guess the conflict in this film.
So that's the parts that sort of didn't appeal to me as much.
It felt fairly tropey, didn't it?
It felt like you sort of like you could chuck on like a comic book movie from the 90s or the 2000s, and that's the kind of villain we would be getting.
And I think that they kind of play it relatively well in the sense that they do that kind of nod where they acknowledge that that's what it is.
I wanted more. And that's what I was saying before. I wanted them to lean into it a bit more, and maybe even then they do some fun stuff.
They nod towards it, but it still is the very typical, villain from the 90s.
But I think they could have played with it more, or they could have done something more clever with it, and it just felt very standardized to me.
So I feel like the villain in this is, yes, very standard. I feel like they give him enough to be better than average, though, and more than functional. He has a full origin. He has screen time on his own when he's more than just kind of being evil and doing stuff and opposing the hero. And given how much of this focus is on this quite large cast of protagonist characters, I found that he worked more than well enough. The first time watching this film, I've seen it twice now. The first time watching it, it was fairly slow to start.
Yes, definitely.
And I was slightly dejected by that, perhaps.
I was too, man. I was like, when is this going to kick in? And then it did.
Yeah, and then there are definitely weaker elements to it, and I think a lot of that is kind of the villain and the juggling of like so much plot in this movie. But the second time I watched it, knowing the highs that the movie reaches, it brought up everything.
Okay.
Rising tide and all that, and there's some really nice parallels in there between Mark Strong's Dr. Savannah and Billy Batson in this movie that I think they don't beat you over the head with it, but they're just really solid in terms of a kind of a hero-villain relationship.
No, I'd agree with you there. That family theme is a nice link between them. What I wanted to see more from Mark Strong, or the villain in this, was somewhat a little more unhinged. For what he's actually doing in this, I think he seemed fairly composed.
Yeah.
And maybe that's just the Mark Strong...
that's a very particular type of... That's kind of your Hannibal Lecter style, like in control, like very kind of calculated evil type thing.
Did you think he was like that? I still think he had that maniacal edge, but I just wanted it to be, I wanted a bit more, like it felt like a little too safe.
Look,
like it didn't feel like honestly, it was trying to be too much this way. It wasn't too much that way. And in the end, it seemed like pretty average.
That makes it sound as though it's really it's Mark Strong that let this down. And I really don't think that's the case. I think that he kind of went with what he was given. I believe that that's more of a scripting and a plot error.
I don't think so. I think he could have, like, in the performance, he could have, like, as we've said, the meat and potatoes of this is not in the villain. It's in the kids.
But I mean, that leaves the villain to be very, like, you can only cram so much into a single film.
It's not about plot, it's about the performance, though. And I think like they could have tweaked it.
I disagree.
Why do you disagree?
I don't think that there was enough done with this villain to, or at least, even if you just kind of take like the script alone, I don't know how he could have played that would have made me go, oh yeah, that's an interesting villain. Like, he can act a little bit more unhinged, but that doesn't really give the character more depth. That just gives it a little bit more of a facelift. That doesn't change the substance.
I think
of the
a
character.
facelift would have been in order. And I think like I just found him painfully sort of average, and I wanted more.
On that.
I wanted more.
We're not disagreeing on that he was painfully average. We're just disagreeing
you're just disagreeing
why.
for disagreeing.
No, we're disagreeing on why. I think that has to do with the plot, and you think that has to do with the acting.
Yeah, I agree mostly that, because I think like thematically there's some great stuff there. I think they give him just the right amount of setup, maybe a little too much even, but
I'd say a little too much, maybe.
Yeah, I don't think Mark Strong does bring anything to the role that I don't think there's any reason that he couldn't either. And I don't think he did a bad job, but yeah, there's certainly nothing in there like, because I don't think his like story in the movie is that drastically different from, say, Loki and Thor, which Tom Hiddleston brought so much into. And I don't think that he does bring kind of much to it. He's a very in some ways he's kind of one-dimensional in his villainy, which works, but yeah, he's definitely not that engaging. But I just don't see that as a big problem with the film at all.
I mean, I do in the sense that it just kind of it made that part of it feel a little flat. Like you said, there's a lot of really great highs in that. That just seemed to me to be a little bit of a, I wish that was a little bit more kind of worked.
Well, thinking about it now, I actually kind of love how just stereotypical villain he is, because the hero is so atypical for so many reasons. You know, just being a 14-year-old kid in a superhero body, it's just kind of a fun contrast. Yeah.
I suppose.
Yeah, I think there's just a few little tweaks they could have made to really amplify that.
What I think of when I think of that is, you know, whenever I see kind of movies giving a bit of a hat tip to genre tropes and anything like that, I always go back to Cabin in the Woods, and I think about the mastery of that film and the fact that they used so many tropes, but they like that movie was still felt fresh and engaging. It was about how they kind of worked around that made it interesting. And I think that this movie could have done a little bit more of that around the villain. Like, I just think that, yes, I like that he was the kind of stereotypical villain, but I think that there could have been a little bit more behind that to make it, I don't know. I
know what you mean. I think they could have lent into it.
On. It's a little bit intangible at this point.
Yeah. Is there anything else you guys wanted to discuss in the non-spoiler part of the review?
There are, I don't know if these are spoilers, so I'll wait for that section, but there are parts of the villainry that I thought were like really cool. And we'll get onto that. I thought the design of the overall film was cool.
Yeah, well, let's talk about the fact that this is for a superhero movie, very cheap film.
Yeah.
Apparently no more than 90 million. That reads fairly clearly in how kind of scaled down it is in a lot of ways, I think. But there were no points in this movie where I thought they were like struggling for budget.
Oh, there was one.
Well, we can talk about that later, I guess.
But I know what you mean. They weren't overexerting themselves, I don't think. I think they stayed within a nice little sort of ballpark to
just
not
focusing on character.
Yeah.
Much more than anything else.
And that's, I really, really tip my hat to them, because I think they they worked with what they had, and they did what they needed to do with what they had.
How'd you guys like the suit, the Shazam outfit?
I loved it, man.
Yeah, I did not think I was going to be as okay with it as I was. Like, it just when you first see it, you're like, that looks, just tacky as fuck.
Yeah, he looks like he's blown up.
Yeah, but in the actual film, I really loved it. I thought it kind of felt perfect, because, like, as you said, it was kind of the stereotypical hero, and he is definitely not a stereotypical hero in the way that he's played, but he looks it. So it just felt like this kind of perfect dichotomy of like this kind of young scrappy kid in this perfect superhero body.
Yeah, because we had some set leaks like a year ago that showed it, and I guess that was my first indication that they were doing something really right, because this is one of the most comic book accurate costumes that we've ever seen. Like,
it's a ballsy move, and I love it.
Yeah, it's so spot on, and it is so ridiculous. So I'm so glad they went with it.
It worked so well for me. I really liked his white cape as well. Like, it was sort of that cream color. Like, cool. You would expect it to be yellow. Yeah, I wish he'd. Let's leave that for spoilers. But yeah, no, I'm with you, man. I'm with you. It was very, very well done.
And how about Jimon Honsu?
Yeah.
Fucking superhero movie MVP.
Yeah.
Just showing up again and again
everywhere,
and again.
Yeah.
This is his second DC movie this year.
What else is he in?
He was in Aquaman
as
the Fisherman King
for about a scene.
Yeah, about half a second.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, I really enjoyed him as the Wizard Shazam, or whatever he's calling him now. It was I just thought he really captured the irresponsibility of that character thrusting this power onto a child. Like, he didn't come across as this, like, benevolent older Gandalf-y kind of guy. He was like fucking angry. He's like, you're powerful now. Yeah. This is your problem.
Help me out.
And that's a really cool. It's a really cool element of the Captain Marvel character, is that he's in way over his head, and he should not be having to deal with this shit because he's a kid.
Yep.
And I like they tapped into that a bit. I really want to highlight how much I loved the family element of this movie. I think that was the biggest strength and the biggest takeaway from this thing.
The mom and dad were very, very well cast.
Yeah, absolutely. So warm, but also you feel like, they maybe did have a rough childhood and they could fuck you up if they wanted to. Yeah. And like just a really nice portrayal of a foster family.
Yes.
Where in so many movies that this movie, is following on from, like, old 80s movies, it could be so stereotypical, like the evil step parents.
It's wonderful to watch a superhero origin where the kid gets parents, doesn't lose them. How lovely.
Yeah.
The little girl as well. She was so funny, man.
Little Darla.
Oh
So
my
perfect.
god.
Just
the one-liners she had. Holy fuck.
note perfect, because she was that really rare example of a child actor who is very young, not giving like a super convincing performance. Like she felt like an actor.
She felt like a child.
Reading the lines, yeah. But it worked so well. It was so sweet.
Yes.
It was so
and it
cute.
wasn't like they were sort of reading these really profound lines or like
she didn't have to do any like real acting. Like it wasn't like she had to act terribly scared.
Yeah,
or
it just act like a kid.
Yeah.
And that honestly, that was one of my favorite characters in this.
So, should we move on to spoilers? Give it or quick last little
final
thoughts,
thoughts?
how we felt about it. I'll go first.
Please.
Because I said so.
Get in there.
I think this is a really fun film. Don't go into it expecting a masterpiece, because it's by no stretch is it a masterpiece. I think that there's some very clear moments where you're like, you'll just kind of ebb and flow type thing. But overall, really happy that this movie turned out the way it did. And as far as being a bit of a lighter side of the DCEU, I think it's long overdue. A very welcome kind of addition. Yeah,
I'm actually like having this conversation with you guys is making me like this even more. I just really got a kick out of this. I think the mid-budgeting and the way they effectively used the characters worked in this film's favor. They didn't overextend themselves. Zachary Levi's great. The kids are fantastic. The warmth and the heart of this film is really what wins it over for me. And yes, I've still got my Mark Strong grudge. That will never die, Mark. Never.
That's a challenge, Mark.
Mark. That's my Mark Strong impression. Mark Strong.
That was good.
But yeah, you know what? I'm actually really looking forward to watching this again. And I highly recommend it.
Me too. I have not been this ecstatic about a superhero movie or almost any movie since I guess Infinity War.
Wow.
I've been trying to hold back my praise for this fucking thing. This is just about my favorite movie of the year. I watched it twice the Thursday it came out. People are going to say I'm biased, but I think that works both ways. If this movie did not please me as a huge fan of the character, I would hate it more than anyone else.
True.
I just love the hell out of this. It nailed so many things, and it just had so much heart to it that was just so encouraging. And more than anything, this movie surprised me again and again and again, especially towards the end that we can talk about in spoilers, in ways that so many other of these kind of movies just sort of peter out. It just really kept going from strength to strength for me. Just the performances sold it so hard. It was just laugh out loud funny throughout. This is easily my favorite DC movie since The Dark Knight, I guess. Which, whatever. But I like it a lot more than a lot of MCU films as well. This is not a recommendation to other people. Definitely go see it, make up your own mind. But this just for me personally, holy fuck, I love this movie.
Nice, man. That's really cool to hear.